Hello to the Humboldt County CERT leadership and all the lead instructors. It's really great to connect with you. Look, we all know the incredible level of operational expertise you bring to the table. So in this explainer, we're going to dig into how we can take that very expertise and channel it into building a really powerful self-sustaining mentorship program for all of your instructors. Everything we're about to talk about, it all comes back to this one single non-negotiable standard. This is our North Star, our mission. It's not just about showing people a few skills, it's about forging volunteers who can actually perform safely and competently when the pressure is on. This is the benchmark. This is what matters. And you know, this brings us right to the heart of the challenge, what we call the expert's dilemma. It's one thing to be a skilled responder, to know what to do in the heat of the moment. It's a completely different skill set to be a great instructor, to know how to teach the what. One person manages a scene, the other has to manage a learning environment. This course, it's designed specifically to bridge that exact gap, to turn your best operators into your very best mentors. So here's our game plan for this breakdown. We'll kick things off with the challenge, then we'll dig into the foundation, the why behind our teaching philosophy. After that, we'll get into the nuts and bolts of how we teach, our method. Then we'll talk about testing those skills, and finally, we'll pull it all together to show you how this whole system becomes the mentorship engine you're looking for. All right, let's dive in. Section 1, the foundation. You see, to build truly great instructors, we can't start with physical skills. We have to start with the psychology of our volunteers. We need to really get a handle on how adults learn, especially when things get stressful. Now, this idea of psychological safety, it's not some soft skill. It has critical, real-world safety implications. Think about it. If a volunteer in your class feels judged or maybe a little intimidated, they're not going to raise their hand and say, "Hey, I'm confused." They'll just hide it. And a confusion that's hidden in the classroom, well, that becomes a mistake just waiting to happen out in the field. Our first job as instructors isn't teaching skills, it's building trust. And this gets us to the core of how adults learn. This course is built around these 5 principles. We teach our instructors to constantly answer that question, why does this matter, by connecting every single skill back to a local Humboldt hazard. We teach them to respect and use the experience that's already in the room, and, most importantly, to build that foundation of psychological safety we were just talking about. And because no class is ever perfect, Module 2 gives every instructor a practical toolkit for managing that learning environment. Now, this isn't about being a disciplinarian. It's about having professional, respectful tools, from something as simple as a redirect all the way to setting a firm boundary, so you can protect the learning space for everyone and keep the whole class focused on the mission. So we've set the foundation, the why behind our approach. Now let's get into the method, the standardized how. Because when we're talking about hands-on skills, consistency isn't just a nice-to-have for quality control, it is a fundamental safety principle. Every single instructor has to be teaching critical skills the exact same way every time. And this right here, this is the absolute pillar of the course's methodology. We call it the skills teaching sequence. It is a simple, non-negotiable, repeatable loop that just takes all the guesswork out of teaching a skill and makes sure that every volunteer is building the correct muscle memory right from the get-go. The sequence itself is incredibly simple and powerful. First, you explain what the skill is, why it's so important, and what good looks like. What's the standard? Then you demonstrate it perfectly. Next, and this is probably the most important part, you coach them as they practice, making those little corrections in real time. And finally, you validate. Can they actually do the skill correctly, on their own, up to the standard we set? It's that straightforward. And this system is crucial because it prevents what we call instructor drift. And as experienced leaders, I know you've all seen this. You've seen the instructor who lectures way too much during practice, or the rescuer instructor who just jumps in and does the skill for the student. The explain, demonstrate, coach, validate sequence, it just shuts down those bad habits before they even start. It makes sure we catch mistakes before they become ingrained muscle memory. Okay, so we've taught the skill, but how do we really know if it's going to hold up when things get stressful? Well, that brings us to the proving ground. This is all about changing our mindset and turning a drill from just an activity into a powerful learning laboratory. We teach a really fundamental shift here. In this model, the debrief isn't just something you do at the end if you have a few minutes left over. The debrief is the main event. A drill is not theater, it's a lab, it's a diagnostic tool. The goal is not to have a flawless, perfect performance. The goal is to systematically find the gaps in our training and our systems before a real disaster finds them for us.
And to make that debrief truly powerful, we use a simple, structured, no-blame framework. We just ask 3 questions. First, what happened? Let's just lay out the facts, a neutral timeline. Then, so what? Okay, let's analyze why it happened that way. And the most important question of all, now what? What specific, concrete, actionable steps are we going to take to get better?
Okay, so let's bring this all home. We've talked about the foundation, the method, and the proving ground. How does all of this actually come together to create that sustainable mentorship program you need to guarantee excellence across all of Humboldt County CERT? Well, the answer is simple. This course creates a common language and a shared set of standards for everyone. Just think about it for a second. When every single one of your instructors understands the why of adult learning, when they all use the same how for teaching skills, and they use the same tests to evaluate them, all of a sudden, mentorship becomes clear, objective, and incredibly effective. This is exactly how the framework becomes your mentorship engine. Your lead instructors can now give feedback that isn't just their personal opinion, it's based on a shared, objective system that everybody understands. They can say, hey, let's take a look at the coach step in your sequence. And the new instructor knows exactly what they're talking about. It gives you clear benchmarks, it empowers your leads, and it raises the bar for instruction across your entire program. So by bringing in a framework like this, you're not just training a few individual instructors. You are building an entire ecosystem of excellence, a culture where your most experienced experts can effectively and consistently mentor the next generation. You're ensuring that every single CERT volunteer in Humboldt County is safe, competent, and ready to act when they are needed most. The only real question left to ask is, how can this framework start elevating your program?